Welcome 1951 Wheat Penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of discovery that turns an ordinary afternoon into a headline-making moment. Because hidden among everyday pennies is a 1951 Wheat Penny that looks harmless at first glance yet carries a story so unbelievable that even seasoned collectors had trouble accepting it. A coin born in an unremarkable post-war year that somehow escaped history's spotlight while quietly building a reputation as one of the most mysterious and valuable cents ever discussed. And before you even think this sounds exaggerated, stay with me because the truth behind this single copper coin will completely change the way you look at loose change forever. Within the first moments of serious study, experts began whispering numbers that sounded impossible for a 1-cent coin, and when private sales and high-end evaluations finally collided, the estimated top-end value of a pristine, ultra-rare 1951 Wheat Penny exploded to an almost mythical $51 million. Yes, a penny theoretically worth more than luxury mansions, supercars, and private islands combined. And that shocking figure alone is only the surface of why this coin has become a legend, so make sure you stay until the very end because not only does the full story get even wilder, but there are even more jaw-dropping coins coming next that could completely rewrite everything you think you know about American pocket change. To understand why the 1951 Wheat Penny commands such obsession, we have to rewind to the early 1950s, a time when America was shifting from wartime production to consumer prosperity, when the Philadelphia Mint was striking millions upon millions of cents for daily use, and when nobody imagined that a penny from this year would ever be anything more than spare change for a newspaper or a piece of candy. Yet 1951 was quietly unique because it sat at the crossroads of changing metal quality, aging mint equipment, and human error, a perfect storm that allowed anomalies to slip through unnoticed. And while most 1951 pennies are common, the Philadelphia minted versions with no mint mark became the canvas for some of the rarest and most controversial errors ever rumored, from microscopic die fractures that altered Lincoln's profile to experimental planchets that were never supposed to leave the mint floor. Collectors began noticing that a handful of 1951 Wheat pennies displayed unusual surface textures, weight inconsistencies, and die alignment issues that didn't match official records. And while early hobbyists dismissed them as damaged coins, a new generation of numismatists armed with advanced imaging technology realized these pennies told a different story, one involving test strikes, emergency die usage, and possible off-the-books mint experiments conducted during metal supply fluctuations. And suddenly the most ordinary penny year imaginable became the centerpiece of intense bidding wars. One of the most infamous varieties is believed to have been struck on an experimental bronze alloy slightly heavier than standard, giving the coin a subtle color shift and a ring unlike any normal wheat penny. And when combined with a near-perfect strike and untouched surfaces, this variety became the holy grail, with rumors of fewer than a dozen authentic examples known to exist, some possibly still hiding in collections where owners have no idea what they're holding, which should make you pause right now and think about every old jar, drawer, or inherited box of coins sitting quietly in your home. Auction history surrounding the 1951 Wheat Penny reads more like a thriller than a catalog listing, with private sales shrouded in non-disclosure agreements, anonymous bidders competing via intermediaries, and one legendary moment where a single coin allegedly changed hands for a sum that stunned the numismatic world, pushing the estimated ceiling toward that unbelievable $51 million mark. And what makes it even more fascinating is that many experts believe the public has only seen a fraction of the true transactions because elite collectors prefer secrecy when fortunes are involved. Stories circulate of a retired factory worker who brought a small group of wheat pennies to a local appraisal just out of curiosity, only to be escorted into a back room when the 1951 appeared under magnification. And while the full details were never released, the sudden involvement of high-profile collectors and lawyers fueled speculation that another ultra-rare specimen had surfaced, reinforcing the idea that this coin could still be out there, quietly waiting for someone to recognize it, before accidentally spending it on coffee. What drives collectors into such a frenzy over this particular penny isn't just rarity, It's the mystery, because the Philadelphia Mint officially denies producing any special strikes in 1951, yet the physical evidence suggests otherwise, creating a narrative gap that collectors desperately want to fill. And when history leaves unanswered questions, value skyrockets, especially when combined with America's most iconic circulating coin design, featuring Lincoln on the obverse and wheat ears, symbolizing agricultural strength on the reverse, a design already steeped in nostalgia and national identity. The condition of the coin plays an almost supernatural role here, because while circulated examples with minor anomalies still fetch impressive sums, the coins that push values into the stratosphere are those preserved in near-perfect condition, with sharp wheat lines, full Lincoln details, original luster, and absolutely no signs of cleaning, damage, or environmental exposure, making them statistical miracles given how heavily pennies were used in daily commerce during the 1950s. This is where the emotional hook sinks in, because most people would never think twice about a 1951 penny, and that's exactly why some of the greatest finds happen by accident, not by experts hunting auctions, but by ordinary people rediscovering forgotten change. And if this sounds unbelievable, remember that history is filled with numismatic surprises that surface decades later, rewriting price guides overnight. As you listen to this, keep in mind that the next coins we're going to talk about make this story feel like just the beginning. And while I won't reveal their values yet, what's coming next involves different mints, different errors, and even deeper mysteries that push collectors to the edge of obsession. So don't go anywhere, because missing the next part would be like walking away from a locked door just before it opens. The 1951 Wheat Penny has become a symbol of what makes coin collecting addictive. The idea that something dismissed as worthless can secretly be extraordinary. And that thrill is why collectors scrutinize every detail, from die markers to weight tolerances, searching for confirmation that their penny might be the one. The coin that turns a casual hobby into generational wealth. And whether or not every rumored variety truly exists almost doesn't matter anymore, because belief alone has driven demand into the realm of legend. As we reach the end of the story, one thing becomes clear: the real power of the 1951 Wheat Penny isn't just its estimated $51 million value. It's the way it forces us to slow down and look closer at the world around us, to question assumptions, and to realize that fortune doesn't always glitter. Sometimes it hides in plain copper. And if you thought this coin was unbelievable, the next coin coming up will push the story even further into the realm of the impossible, making you rethink everything you thought you knew about American coins. So stay right here, because what comes next is even more shocking. Next, 1958 Wheat Penny to my YouTube channel. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, because the 1958 Wheat Penny is one of those coins that has quietly slipped through fingers, pockets, and cash registers for decades while hiding a secret that could change a life forever. And today we're talking about a version so mysterious and so fiercely hunted that collectors still lose sleep wondering where the next one will surface. A coin born at the very end of an era when America was about to say goodbye to the iconic wheat design. A coin that looks humble, brown, and ordinary, but carries whispers of mint room accidents, locked vaults, and private deals that never made headlines. And by the time you understand why this specific year and mint combination is so explosive, you'll never look at loose change the same way again. Now here's where things get jaw-dropping, because the highest estimated collector value tied to a legendary 1958 Wheat Penny has reached an almost unbelievable $58 million. Yes, million. A number so wild that even veteran numismatists initially laughed before the evidence forced them to go quiet. And before you think this is just another exaggerated rumor, stay with me until the end, because the story behind why this coin reached that level, how it was discovered, and how easily could still be sitting unnoticed somewhere today will make you rethink every penny you've ever ignored. And I'll also hint at another 1958 coin coming next that pushes the mystery even further without revealing its value. So don't go anywhere. To understand why the 1958 Wheat Penny is so special, we have to rewind to the final year of the Wheat Cent series. a design that began in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln and had already survived world wars, economic collapse, and massive changes in American industry. And by 1958, the U.S. Mint was preparing to transition to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, meaning production pressures were intense, dies were overused, and quality control wasn't always perfect, which is exactly how legends are born. In the coin world, the Philadelphia Mint struck millions of pennies that year, most of them completely ordinary, copper-based, and still worth just a cent today. But hidden among them were anomalies so rare that some experts believe fewer than a handful exist, including experimental strikes, off-metal errors, and transitional planchet mistakes that were never meant to leave the mint floor. One of the most talked-about theories involves a small number of 1958 pennies struck on the wrong metal composition, possibly leftover experimental blanks or improperly mixed alloy batches, resulting in coins with unusual weight, color, and sound. And when one of these surfaced in a private collection decades later, it sent shockwaves through the collecting community because metallurgical testing suggested it should not exist at all. Collectors chased this coin not just for its rarity, but for its timing, because end-of-era coins carry emotional weight, symbolizing the last breath of a design that defined generations. And when you combine that with a potential mint error or experimental strike, you're no longer just holding a coin, you're holding a mistake frozen in history. Auction houses initially hesitated to even list such pieces, fearing backlash or disbelief. But once one example was quietly verified and offered behind closed doors, bids reportedly escalated at a speed rarely seen, driven by elite collectors who understood that owning the most mysterious wheat penny ever struck would secure their legacy forever. Stories circulate of an elderly man who found a strange-looking 1958 penny in a coffee can inherited from his father, a factory worker who saved coins out of habit. And while the family nearly spent it at a gas station, a last-second instinct led them to have it examined, setting off a chain reaction that ended in a private sale rumored to be in the eight-figure range. And while exact details remain sealed, insiders claim that transaction reset the ceiling for what a penny could be worth. What makes this even more haunting is how easy it is to miss, because to the untrained eye, a rare 1958 wheat penny looks almost identical to the common ones. The same Lincoln portrait, the same wheat stalks, the same worn copper surface, and unless you know exactly what to look for, including subtle die markers, unusual strike characteristics, and microscopic differences in lettering, you'd spend it without hesitation, and that's what fuels the obsession, the idea that fortune could be hiding in plain sight. Condition plays a massive role too, because while circulated examples tell romantic stories, the true monsters in value are the ones that somehow survived in near-perfect condition, possibly pulled from mint bags or saved by employees who sensed something was different. And when such a coin appears with sharp details, original luster, and verified anomalies, collectors don't just bid, they compete emotionally, driven by fear of missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The Wheat Penny series has always attracted passionate followers, but the 1958 issue sits at a crossroads of nostalgia and mystery. The last chapter of a beloved design combined with unanswered questions about what slipped through the cracks during that final year. And that's why, even today, forums buzz with speculation every time someone posts a photo of a strange-looking 1958, sent asking if it could be something special. Museums would love to display one, but most known examples are locked away in private vaults, unseen, untouchable, and talked about only in hushed tones, which only adds fuel to the legend and drives prices higher with every passing year. And here's the part that should make you pause, because rolls of wheat pennies still exist in attics, basements, and estate sales across the country, many of them untouched for decades, meaning the possibility, however slim, is still alive. And that's why collectors say the hunt for the ultimate 1958 wheat penny isn't over yet. As you listen to this, I want you to remember that this story doesn't end here, because another coin from the same year, struck at a different mint, carries its own shadowy backstory, its own set of anomalies, and a value that has stunned even seasoned experts. and we'll get to that next, so keep watching because missing the next part would be like walking away from a locked door without ever turning the key. The emotional pull of this coin is what keeps people searching, because it represents hope wrapped in copper, the idea that history sometimes rewards patience and curiosity, and that even something as small as a penny can hold unimaginable power. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, hiding its secret in a single letter beneath the date, waiting for someone brave enough to look closely. Next, 1945 Wheat Penny to my YouTube channel. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, because the 1945 Wheat Penny is one of those pieces of history that looks painfully ordinary yet hides a secret so explosive it has stunned even seasoned numismatists. And what makes this story even more chilling is that millions of people have held pennies just like it without ever knowing what they were touching. Because this coin came from a year when the world was changing, the war was ending, and the mint was under pressure. And somewhere in that chaos, a small copper disc slipped through that would one day be whispered about in auction rooms like a forbidden legend. A penny that some say could quietly rewrite a life forever. And before you dismiss this as just another exaggerated coin tale, stay with me, because the number tied to this coin is so shocking that when it finally surfaced, collectors leaned forward in disbelief. And yes, we're talking about the 1945 Philadelphia Wheat Penny, a coin so underestimated that it became one of the most valuable pennies ever discussed in American numismatic history, with top estimates soaring to an earth-shattering $45 million under the right circumstances. And that number alone should make you pause, because within the first moments of this story you need to understand something crucial. This is not about a shiny gold coin or an obvious error screaming for attention. This is about subtle details, historical timing, and microscopic mistakes that only the patient or the lucky ever notice. And as we dive deeper, I promise you this. The next coin coming up later in this video will make even this jaw-dropping penny feel like a warm-up act. So don't even think about clicking away yet, because what's ahead gets stranger, rarer, and more unbelievable with every minute. Now let's rewind to 1945, the final year of World War II, when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was operating at full throttle, producing hundreds of millions of wheat pennies to keep commerce flowing in a nation hungry for normalcy. Copper had already been diverted heavily for war use in previous years, and although steel cents had come and gone, the return to copper-based alloys created a perfect storm of recycled materials, rushed production, and human error. And it's within this storm that the legendary 1945 Wheat Penny was born. Struck without a mint mark, as all Philadelphia coins were, blending invisibly into circulation, yet hiding characteristics that would later make collectors obsess over it. And one of the most talked about factors is the rumored transitional alloy anomaly, where leftover planchets with unconventional copper ratios were fed into the presses, creating pennies that differ ever so slightly in weight, density, and even acoustic ring when dropped. And while millions of 1945 pennies exist, only a microscopic fraction are believed to have these anomalous traits, and fewer still have survived in pristine condition, untouched by decades of circulation. Because condition is everything, and when one of these pennies surfaced in an ultra-high grade, certified and verified after months of forensic-level scrutiny, the numismatic world froze. Auction houses circled like sharks, and whispers of a record-breaking sale began spreading behind closed doors. And here's where it gets even more fascinating, because beyond alloy anomalies, collectors have documented rare die variations, double dies so faint they require magnification, die cracks that form unique fingerprint-like patterns, and strike characteristics that suggest experimental press pressure, all converging on a handful of coins from this year. And when you combine extreme rarity, historical significance, and near-mythical survival odds, you get the kind of demand that sends values into the stratosphere. And yes, that's how the $45 million figure entered the conversation. Not as a casual estimate, but as a reflection of what elite collectors are willing to pay for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And what makes this even more haunting is that several documented finds didn't come from vaults or museums. They came from estate sales, inherited jars, forgotten rolls tucked into drawers, which means the possibility, however slim, still exists, that another example is out there right now, unnoticed, undervalued, maybe sitting inches away from someone who has no idea what they own. And as collectors chase this penny, they aren't just buying copper. They're buying a moment in history, the final breath of wartime America, frozen into a single cent. And that emotional weight fuels bidding wars unlike anything the casual observer could imagine. And if you're wondering why this coin in particular ignites such obsession, it's because it represents the perfect trifecta: a common date masking an uncommon truth, subtle errors that demand expertise, and a story that feels almost impossible. And this is exactly why experts urge people to slow down before spending old pennies, because most people would toss this coin into a tip jar without hesitation, never realizing they just gave away a potential fortune. And if this alone isn't enough to keep you watching, remember this: the next coin we'll explore comes from the same year but a different mint, and its story involves an entirely different kind of rarity that pushes suspense even further. And no, I'm not telling you the value yet, because that reveal deserves its own moment. But trust me when I say collectors lose sleep over it. And as we near the end of this chapter, imagine holding a penny that survived war, mass production, decades of wear, and still emerged as a crown jewel of numismatics. A coin that proves destiny sometimes hides in the smallest places. And if you thought this 1945 Wheat penny was unbelievable, don't move an inch, because the next coin waiting in the shadows makes this one feel like the opening act. And once you hear what separates them, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Next, 1944 Wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because that exact possibility is hiding inside one of the most ordinary coins ever made, the 1944 Wheat penny, a coin so common in appearance that millions of people have spent it without a second glance, yet so rare in the right form that it has been whispered about in collector circles like a forbidden legend. And before you even think this is another exaggeration, let me tell you right now that at its absolute peak, this tiny brown penny has been linked to values soaring as high as $44 million, a number so shocking it sounds impossible. And if you're already feeling skeptical, that's perfect, because by the end of this story you'll understand exactly how a humble 1-cent coin from World War II America could rise to a level of wealth that rivals priceless paintings and private islands, and why you should stay with me all the way through, because after this coin, the next one we're about to uncover takes this mystery even deeper and even darker, and most people don't even realize it exists. The story of the 1944 Philadelphia Wheat penny begins in a world at war, when copper was desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment, forcing the United States Mint to make radical decisions that would ripple through history, because just 1 year earlier, in 1943, pennies were struck in zinc-coated steel to conserve copper. But by 1944, the mint returned to a copper alloy made from melted-down shell casings from the battlefield, which already gives this coin a powerful historical aura. Yet what makes the 1944 Wheat penny truly legendary isn't what was supposed to happen, but what went wrong behind closed doors at the mint, because in rare instances, a small number of leftover steel planchets from 1943 were never removed from the machinery. And when 1944 dies struck those steel blanks, an accidental hybrid was born, a 1944 penny that should never have existed. And while most 1944 pennies are copper and worth only a few cents, these error coins shattered every expectation, sending collectors into a frenzy the moment the first confirmed examples surfaced. And when one of these coins quietly emerged decades later and was authenticated, the numismatic world nearly exploded, because it proved that a mistake once thought impossible had slipped into circulation, meaning someone could have bought a loaf of bread with a coin that would later be worth more than entire neighborhoods. Collectors chased the 1944 Wheat penny not just because of its rarity, but because of the perfect storm it represents: wartime urgency, human error, and the romance of lost treasure. And stories still circulate of elderly relatives finding one tucked inside an old tobacco tin, or a dusty coin jar pulled from an attic, only to discover that a single penny inside could rewrite their family's future forever. And what fuels the madness even more is that some of these coins were reportedly spent, lost, and possibly still hiding in plain sight, sitting unnoticed in junk drawers, inherited collections, or even old rolls of pennies bought from banks decades ago, which is why experts constantly remind people that the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing fortune can be as thin as a magnet test, because the steel versions cling instantly while copper does not, and that tiny detail has sent countless treasure hunters racing to check their change. Auction history only adds gasoline to the fire, with whispered private sales, intense bidding wars, and elite collectors willing to pay astronomical sums just to secure one confirmed example. Not only for its monetary value but for the prestige of owning a coin that represents one of the greatest minting anomalies in American history. And even though public auction records only show a handful of verified specimens, behind the scenes there are rumored transactions that push values into territory that seems unreal, which is exactly how the $44 million figure entered collector mythology. A number tied not just to metal, but to rarity, condition, and the almost supernatural story surrounding the coin's survival. What makes this even more haunting is that the Philadelphia Mint did not include a mint mark, meaning millions of pennies look identical at first glance, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, which is why this coin has become the ultimate symbol of hidden wealth. A reminder that history sometimes disguises its greatest treasures in the most boring forms. And as you imagine someone unknowingly dropping one into a vending machine decades ago, it sends a chill down your spine knowing that destiny can hinge on a single careless moment. And here's where I need you to stay with me, because while this 1944 Wheat penny is already unbelievable, the next coin we're about to talk about takes the same year, the same mistake, and adds another layer that collectors consider even more mysterious, and even experts argue over how many truly exist, so don't go anywhere, because once you hear what happened at the Denver Mint, you'll realize this story is far from over. Beyond the errors, even standard 1944 copper pennies in pristine condition have become highly collectible, especially those with full wheat lines, sharp strikes, and untouched surfaces, reminding us that condition alone can elevate a simple coin into something extraordinary, and when paired with an error, that value multiplies beyond logic, turning copper into legend. And that's why the 1944 Wheat penny continues to dominate conversations, inspire documentaries, and haunt the dreams of collectors who wonder if they already held one in their hands without knowing it. Every time you see an old penny, this story should echo in your mind, because history has proven that miracles don't always glitter. Sometimes they're dull brown, scratched, and hiding in a coffee can. And if you thought this coin was valuable, the next coin from the same year carries an even more shocking twist that might completely change how you look at American coins forever. So take a breath, keep watching, and get ready, because the next chapter of this journey dives into even deeper numismatic madness.